Welcome to Winning Inside, the show where we follow the journey from feeling defeated to winning. Here are your hosts, Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman.
Hello, amazing people. Welcome to the Winning Inside podcast, where we discuss real issues, insights, and solutions to help you thrive in your day-to-day lives.
We know life happens and we can choose to be a spectator or a participant. Hey, Cheddy.
Hey, Michelle, it's always good to see you. Looking all radiant today in your blue, looking all glowy. Okay, what is going on? Why are you so glowy? I'm here in my t-shirt and here you are like looking all like you're ready to hit the stage and grab the mic. So what's going on?
Yeah. Nothing, just, next level, right? Like we're entrepreneurs and sometimes we show up on Zoom. And sometimes it's just phone call, sometimes it's in person, but predominantly it's phone call and on Zoom. And even if I don't have that, I'm of the mindset these days to get up, get dressed, put some makeup on, and show up for my business.
Yes.
As if I was going to an office.
I love that mindset. I need to adopt that again. I used to do that. And when I got to the California side, I was like, oh, nobody dresses up. This is great. But it's not. It's good and it's not good. You've got to balance and monitor that. You've got to moderate that. So I've got to get back to doing what I do. Because there was a time when you never saw me dressed like this unless I was working out. And now this is my baseline. But it's not a good business baseline. And I'm not like... I'm not some ultra billionaire who walks around like this in my t-shirt. Looks like it costs $3 when it costs $3,000. That's not me either. So I need to get back to being professional and being able to present myself, because in my mind, I should be able to grab a mic and be able to get on stage at any time. But dressed like this, all I can do is grab a towel and go to the gym. So I've got to fix that. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a different venue. I've got to be prepared. And you prepare yourself in mindset and in demeanor and the way you dress. So yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love that.
Although I know that you could get up on stage in a t-shirt and shorts and do just fine and be very compelling. So
you best believe it. So
that would not define, it wouldn't define how you present yourself in terms of, what you have to say in your presence, because that's always there. This is just, for me, it's that extra level of vibe.
That is why you are who you are. That is why you're so phenomenal and you're always on point. So point taken, example acknowledged, and actions will be taken on my end too, because thank you for making me sharp and keeping me on point, my dear.
Oh, you're so welcome. Anytime.
Love it.
So last week we discussed a little bit about tolerance of bad behavior and sometimes how we can ignore it in the moment, and we begin to build up tolerance of how other people treat us, of how we allow other people to treat us, how we allow other people to communicate with us, all of those negative behaviors or negative circumstances outside of ourselves, right? And building up tolerance to that, where then we become sort of, I don't know, we just don't notice it anymore. And that behavior, that like kind of bar gets lower and lower and lower, where we start being tolerant of a lot of negative behavior around us, but we're still experiencing the stress behind it, right?
Yes.
So it's not so much that we're like, oh, I'm okay with it. I'm in the sort of, I don't give a fuck attitude, right? Like, can't hurt me. So sorry, this is going to be explicit. Earmuffs, kids, earmuffs. But at the end of the day, it's not about having that attitude and not letting things bother you. It actually does bother you. As Cheddy spoke to last week, it starts to diminish your self-worth when you continuously allow other people to sort of push on those boundaries.
Yeah.
So that was the big message, I think, from last week, is just becoming aware of how we're letting others push on the boundaries that we set in place to protect our self-worth, to protect our mental health. All of those very important elements that make up your overall sense of well-being. Now, on the flip side of that, this week, we wanted to talk about tolerance of negative feelings, negative vibrations in your body. But from the standpoint of building up tolerance to those things in order to achieve your goals. So we've discussed this in the past, but a lot of times when we're pursuing our goals, we start to go out of our comfort zone. And once we leave that comfort zone, excuse me. Once we leave that comfort zone, our sort of lizard brain is like, yeah, no, I'm not sure. I don't really like this, right? Because we're really pushing our own boundaries in terms of our sense of safety or sense of security.
Yes.
I mean, not that we're putting ourselves physically at risk, but mentally at risk because we are taking risks in our life. I swear I can talk.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, we're talking this week about how we build up tolerance to that immediate sort of fight, flight, or freeze reaction when we are trying new things in order to better or improve ourselves.
Yes. So Michelle's talking about growth behavior, things that help us to grow. And the thing about growing, you always hear about growing pains. When I was younger, and I was a runt. When I was younger, I was extremely tiny. And at some point, my knees started hurting. And the doctor was like, oh, it's growing pains. I didn't grow for another 2 years. So I don't know what he was talking about. But I understand the concept of as you grow, things start to get uncomfortable as you start to shift and transition and things get a little disproportionate. You walk a little funny. Things just feel off. That's what it can feel like when you're growing in a space. It's uncomfortable. Because guess what? Our comfort zone is nice, it's warm, it's fuzzy, it's like that blanket that you just like. But when you want to grow, you have to leave that alone. And in that space, you're in the unknown, you're in an area where things are unfamiliar to you, you don't know where everything is, therefore you feel uncertain, unsure, it doesn't feel right, you're not used to it yet. So that kind of a tolerance is what we want to increase in this space. How do we increase that? Michelle, how do we increase that? I mean, and why is that important? Why is that important? Mm-hmm. Because you've heard me say this, and Michelle, you said this too. There's no growth in the comfort zone. That's where dreams go to die. So if you want to grow, you have to experience life in that space that is not comfortable, that is new, because that's where the growth is. But does it always feel nice? Absolutely not. But just like anything, just like working out, you start curling initially and it might hurt, you might get sore, but after a while you gain tolerance and strength and you're able to do that thing. Then you increase it more. And it's funny how I'm using like a workout analogy when that's Michelle's thing, but I think I'd steal that from you.
So yeah, no, we're talking about failure tolerance. Yeah. Right. So that's a huge element of growth here. And the other aspect of it is when you are working to improve and better yourself, you're dealing with your own tolerance to that failure, your own tolerance to the risks that you're taking and the changes that you're making. But the other aspect of it is that how others perceive you and how others interact with you as the person you were before you started changing, that can throw a whole wrench into all of the work that you're doing, right? And that is the trick right here. I see it a lot, particularly when my clients or individuals are looking to lose a lot of weight, right? So when you lose that weight and you feel almost uncomfortable having lost that weight, and there's so many reasons why, right? You still envision yourself as the person who had all this excess weight on. And I can relate. I mean, I was 234 pounds when I was pregnant. I'm 5'9" on a good day. I'm like, thank God that 50-pound baby came out because, like... this is a lot on this frame. Oh. But at the end of the day, when you get comfortable in this state of being, and even afterwards, I was comfortable with the body that I had because it felt sort of safe, right? I felt like I could, I don't know, protect myself, protect my baby. I felt really comfortable with where I was at. And when I started to lose weight, I mean, trust me, there was physical discomfort with all the excess weight. But at the end of the day, the mental part of it, when I started to lose weight right after I had a baby and then hit a plateau, I was at that plateau for years. Yeah. Because that became my new normal, my new comfort zone, right? And changing out of that, it's almost as though I didn't know how other people would perceive me, right? And I thought more about how other people perceive me than how I perceive myself because I was constantly in self-judgment either way, but I didn't see it as a weight loss thing. It was just other people perceive me as I'm no longer that athlete that I was in college, right? And it was to the major detriment of my mindset. And so my weight has oftentimes fluctuated in around that plateau that I was at, regardless of what my goals were. And now I'm at a space where I don't judge myself where I'm at on that journey. And it's taken a lot of work to get here. And wherever I'm at around that plateau, and it's like a 20-pound range, I'm not kidding you, I'm okay with it, right? Because I've worked on the mental aspect of it. It doesn't matter how others perceive me. It doesn't matter how others relate to me. What matters is how I relate to myself. So when we're talking about failure tolerance and when we're talking about tolerance in order to achieve the things that you want, one, it's taking risks to put yourself out there, to be vulnerable. And as Cheddy mentioned, it's like when you go into the gym and you start exercising after you've been gone for a long time and you are super sore for a few days, and then you keep going back and you increase your muscle tone and you increase your strength. It's because you don't give up after that first time where you're like, oh my God, I'm so sore. I'm never going to the gym again. Right?
Yeah.
Like you just know that you have to get through that initial discomfort in order to build your tolerance of weight training. It's similar to when you want to achieve a huge goal that you may even think is completely out of reach or impossible for you.
Yeah.
Just taking those little steps and feeling the discomfort, feeling the hurt, if you will, right? But still taking the actions after that, the next smallest action after that, you will train your brain to become more tolerant of that discomfort, more tolerant of that fear of failure or the fear of judgment.
Yes. And it's interesting how you use an exercise physical example of that. But I can also share some examples where I've done this in other spaces. Michelle, you know me, I like to say yes to everything, which sometimes means just saying no to a lot of things because it's very hard. You spread yourself thin and you can't give your highest and best if you're always saying yes. So as you know, Michelle, I have been working on saying no. And you know how uncomfortable that is for me to say no. But I've been doing that lately a lot. And it's an exercise where saying no is not saying no to an activity or no to something. It's saying yes to me. It's saying yes to my opportunities, yes to my time, yes to my space, yes to my value and my worth. So I've learned to turn that no, that one word of no or for that action or that event into yes for me and advocating for my time and the value of my time and my talents. It has been empowering. But I'm going to tell you, it's very hard. As you know, Michelle, it's an awkward space for me. I've said no and still done yes. And a lot of people expect me to do no, say no, and do yes. But lately, I've been saying and doing the same thing. So my words and deeds are congruent in that space. And I'm advocating for myself. And it's becoming easier to say no. I say no without the guilt that was attached, that thing, that voice that would say, well, really, you should do it. What if you don't do it? They really need you. You're kind of selfish. All these things that they sound righteous, but really they're negative. But they sound you give them a lot of validity and you listen to what they say and then you do what they say. Well, maybe you should do it this one time. They really need your help. Well, Sometimes helping is what people need. Sometimes it's disempowering. So in me taking my power back, I'm also enabling others to regain their power as well. So to me, it's a growth thing. But there's other areas too. Another one, speaking negatively about myself. Years ago, I may say some things that were self-deprecating. I may say some things that are self-abusive. Let's just call it that. Oh, I'm an idiot. We talk like that and we say it in jest. It becomes very easy to say that. And it's very disarming. People like it when you say that. But I refuse now to diminish myself to enable someone else to feel better. That makes no sense to me. We can both empower each other. All ships rise in the tide. So I have learned now that instead of beating up myself and using negative language in myself, I don't tolerate that anymore. I don't tolerate people talking to me that way. I also don't tolerate myself using those words as well. And that was uncomfortable. That was scary. It was weird. It wasn't normal, but I've changed my habits and my behaviors as it relates to myself. So yes, say yes to yourself. Learn to stretch yourself a little bit. And it is hard and it doesn't feel good. But the more you do it, the easier it gets and the stronger those behaviors can become.
So a little bit of what you're talking about is establishing new habits in terms of your actions, new habits in terms of your behaviors, and new habits in terms of your thought patterns.
Yes.
And as Cheddy was mentioning, when you make that choice, when you make that firm decision to make that shift, it's whether or not it feels uncomfortable. So for him, definitely saying no felt uncomfortable. I know.
Yes.
But the other example he offered, which was, I'm not going to allow myself to be self-deprecating. I'm not going to allow myself to say negative things about myself to make other people feel better. That may not have felt as uncomfortable per se, but it was a choice that he had to put forth specific effort in terms of becoming aware of his language, in terms of becoming aware of his thoughts even. So
Yes.
it takes intention to shift those habits and we fall back into our own old patterns, our old behaviors, our old thoughts, all of those things. We fall back into it because it was a consistent state of being, right?
Yes.
And whether it's pushing forward and experiencing growing pains and wanting to become more tolerant of that discomfort in order to achieve the goals that you have, or whether it's just becoming aware of where we fall back into old patterns that don't serve us anymore, right? If we're looking to up level our lives to the next iteration of ourselves, the one that we look at and we're like, hell yeah, that's who I know I can be, then expect to experience discomfort and expect to challenge your old thought patterns, your old behaviors, your old habits. Just expect that is going to be a challenge, and it takes intention, it takes practice, it takes effort, it takes lots of failure.
Ooh, I was going to go there.
And that's where the failure tolerance comes into play.
Yes.
Because failure will happen. It's just, then what's the next smallest step that you want to take, that you feel comfortable taking, that you feel safe taking? Because there will be huge failures.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is to just not stop moving forward. We will continuously fall back down that hill, but you can start climbing back up it again.
Yes. That's beautiful. When you talk about failure tolerance, some of us are afraid to fail. Therefore, we limit our capabilities, our possibilities, and the things that we go after because we're afraid to fail. But some of the biggest lessons you can receive are in failure. They really are. I say this all the time, but it's how we learn to walk. Children learn to walk by failing hundreds, if not thousands of times, and they get it. We become adults and we lose that desire to fail, to learn, because we think failure is fatal and it's final, but it isn't. It's a journey. It's a reference point. It gives you the next step. And if we can get to the point where we are okay to fail, we can innovate, we can create, we can discover our best selves. We can discover who we deserve to be, what we can do. And you push the envelope in your own life, which means if you're pushing the envelope, you get to achieve the things that you desire in your own life. So again, you have the pen to your life and you get to author that. And sometimes we don't do it because we're trying to be safe. But what is safe? Safe from what? Safe from who? You have an ability to expand and grow. It's within you. It's innate. It's in there. But sometimes we just don't want to get into that uncomfort and that icky feeling of just not being perfect. Well, perfect. I don't know. If you know anybody that's perfect, that's walking this up, let me know, because it's a hard state to achieve. I don't know what that looks like, but I know it's a journey and not a destination. And all we can do is try to do our best and improve every day. That's a great space to be. And it's a brave space to be. And I think I've said this before, being childlike and not childish. But I always say this. Children are brave. They're full of energy. They're courageous. They can do it all. And I love that, because at some point we lose those things. But that's where growth happens. That's how we discover and we explore and we learn more about ourselves. We increase our awareness. These are all great things. So yes, increase your tolerance as it comes to voting for yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to win, even if it's uncomfortable. And watch how easy it becomes. And the things that you think are hard right now, watch over time and reflect on how those things that were difficult at one point somewhat are easy now, or will be easy in the future. Things get easier with time. So focus on that. That's my 2 cents for today. And hopefully it gives you some growth and something you can take on with you.
I am on a mission to shift 500 minds in 50 days. And I believe we have 16 days left.
Whoa.
So how are we going to do that, Cheddy?
I'm inviting everyone to share this challenge and just really share any episode with any of your friends, colleagues, people that you are associated with, 5 people, and email us directly at winninginsidepodcast@gmail.com and let us know who you shared our podcast with, what you liked, how the information has benefited you, and how you can work with us.
So let's go help 500 people transform their mindset and just watch what happens.
Ciao.
Stay amazing, baby.
Stay magical.
Thank you for listening to Winning Inside with Cheddy Matthews and Michelle Wickman. If you enjoyed today's show, please make sure to click the follow button, rate and review at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can connect with Cheddy and Michelle at winninginside.io. Keep listening. Another episode is coming soon.